They say making the same build guide over and over and over again for each new patch is the definition of insanity, or at the very least, it's the sort of thing that drives me insane. So this time, I'm not remaking my old Veil of Quills. I'm going for something completely new. Minion Repeater Veil of Quills. That's right, there's new relics that allow Veil of Quills to spawn from Repeater and for Phantom Marksman to use your Repeater. And so, now that I've cleared Tier 16, let's go over all the details. Pay close attention to the Relic, Constellation, and Blessing sections, because there's some things where if you get it wrong, your build won't function very well. Starting with the Relics. The first of which is Belt of the Cowboy. This replaces all of the old methods of conviction generation. Now, when you take damage, gain a portion of your max conviction equal to 74% of your evasion, which is why it is very important to cap, and if you're going into Void, i.e. tier 13 to 16 of Endless Nightmares, overcap your evasion, because this is going to be a majority of your recovery and your health pool. As a quick note about Belt of a Cowboy, at the start of a level when you don't have any conviction, sometimes you will take a hit that just kills you. Don't worry about it. That's what Second Wind's for. Of course, to go with this, we are using Written Promise. 6% of conviction is going to max out almost instantaneously. So this is just a really nice damage bonus, and you need base damage for Veil of Quills to feel good. Now, the next thing you might have noticed, there's no Mark of a Vulture, because this build works a little bit differently. See, instead of casting Veil of Quills yourself, like a pleb, you're instead going to spawn it using Lone Quill. And you'll notice Lone Quill says, shoot a Veil of Quills projectile. A singular. It does not fire out multiple projectiles. In addition, Green Leaf allows you to generate even more by hitting withered enemies with physical damage. Thankfully, Repeater is base physical damage, and Veil of Quills is quite good at building Wither on enemies. So to take advantage of this, you really need to maximize both the amount of damage that you get from each Veil of Quills projectile, and how efficiently it hits enemies. That's where Energized Figurine comes in, where it converts Veil of Quills to a single lightning projectile dealing 200% of your original damage. Well, these are already a single projectile, so this causes them to just deal double damage. And it greatly increases the projectile speed, which is important because in the past, you couldn't really get the maximum damage out of Feathered Dagger without investing a lot into skill projectile speed. Instead, you don't need to do that anymore. In fact, you don't need any skill projectile speed. Watch this. The Veil of Quills projectile instantly shoots between the target, using all of its pierces immediately. So all of that is already the core of a damn solid build. But there's another unique relic, Infested Weapon, which now allows Phantom Marksman to shoot Repeater instead of their normal attack. And remember, on Repeater hit, Lone Quill triggers. Repeater is a physical skill, so it can trigger Greenleaf once you fully wither a boss. Combine all of this and you get a Phantom Marksman Veil of Quills build. Fun fact, Infested Weapons can also be used to play a really strong Phantom Marksman Plague Repeater build. I'm going to be making a video on that soon, so if that's interesting to you, do be sure to get subscribed and hey, leave a like while you're down there. It really helps out with the YouTube algorithm. Last up, there's Scorched Bones, which is just a really good damage bonus. 44% multiplicative damage and speed. So it's 1 times 1.44 times 1.44. There's a decent chance this gets nerfed in the future, but for now, it's really awesome. Then for rare relics, I recommend one relic with Wither build-up rate. You want the enemy to be withered for Greenleaf, so Wither build-up rate helps you get there faster. You also want one Resilient relic. This gives Conviction Decay resistance, and it stacks up very efficiently. After that, you can take an all-res relic, makes it much easier to cap resistances for Void. After that, you stack a whole bunch of skill projectile amount, damage against bleeding enemies, and damage against blighted enemies relics. Skill projectile amount, because it scales your repeater projectiles. More hits means more Veil of Quills. It's my understanding that this modifier will not scale either Lone Quill or Greenleaf, as the point of these relics is a single projectile that cannot be scaled. Luckily, you get around that by scaling the thing spawning the projectiles. Damage against Blighted, pretty One that might make a little bit less sense is Bloodletting, damage with hits against bleeding enemies. Where this comes in is Repeater is dealing physical damage. And so during a lot of boss fights, you're going to see them bleeding, thus enabling the damage bonus. That said, it is a lower priority relic to stack as compared to blood damage or skill projectile amount. Now, when it comes to crafting these relics, prioritize plague or lightning damage. This will get you a lot of base damage. Then work on things like summon damage or spell skill damage. These are powerful scalers that are more impactful than stacking up your 26th percentile of plague damage, though you will still want a few plague and lightning damage modifiers here or there. On your larger relics, also look out for crit damage and percent mana, in addition to the flat mana that you should have on your Grand/Exalted relics and on your small relics. Getting those flat mana affixes really help build up your mana pool, which not only scales your damage, but gives you more conviction, thus making you tankier. Now for gear, weapon. Base damage, skill projectile amount, plague damage, lightning damage. Left ring, get crit chance, it's the best option. Right ring, base damage or crit damage. For your scarf, jacket, and cap, use them to cap either your evasion rating, as you need that for Belt of a Cowboy, or potentially get some anti-magic on your chest for even more mitigation. Just keep in mind that anti-magic at Void is very high investment. For pants, cooldown speed, you can use it to cap Phys Res if you need. Belt, cooldown speed. You can also use ailment duration here though. Boots, movement speed Eli-Res, it's the only good option. Amulet, if you're really struggling for mana, you can do mana minus mana cost. I recommend mana cooldown speed. For your keepsake, either mana or max conviction. Try both, see what gives you more total conviction. Now, on the Great Bell, there's a couple things to keep an eye out for. Start by getting all of your basic mechanics. Things like Fourth Blessing, red portals, main damage nodes, all that. From there, you'll want to invest into Arcane Conviction. There's one node here, and one node here. These give conviction from mana spent, allowing you to more easily sustain conviction in between Belt of a Cowboy procs. You can also double dip a little bit here, because you can get both summon damage and spell skill damage, since after all, it is a summon using a spell skill. You don't need all of these nodes, but they are pretty nice, and the crit nodes are quite nice, so I recommend taking them. After that, invest into evasion. This makes it easier to cap your evasion out for Belt of a Cowboy. Unfortunately, it does mean going through some attack speed, which is not particularly useful, but hey, you're getting movement speed, that's always really good quality of life, and you're getting evasion. If you don't mind moving slower, you can drop this branch in particular to go for more things like damage or maximum conviction. And as always, don't be afraid to use res nodes to cap out your resistances. Now for Constellations, there's a few important things to invest in. First, you will take Expeditus. This unlocks agility orbs, and also gives some plague damage and some evasion, stuff that you definitely want. From here, I recommend investing into Anhanga. You want to reach the 30% multiplicative plague damage. Here's the thing though, at this point, there is nothing that you want to fill out next. You don't have any good constellation options. So you put 1 point here into the Faith node and fill out all of Tupa. Then unspec that 1 point. After that, you can fill out Yabba Bello, specifically to get the +1 pierce. Remember, your projectile moves very quickly, it's going to pierce everything more or less instantly, so it's going to give you all the damage that you need, more or less for free. From here, you want to fill out Iroko, but again, you don't meet the requirements. You also want Exo Caviera, which you don't meet the requirements for. So you're going to put 1 point here in the Fury Path and fill out all of the Conviction constellation before reclaiming that point because you do not need 500 max life. This puts you at 7/7 Discipline Faith. So you can put all of the points into Exu, that's unlocked. You still can't put the points into Iroko. You need 1 Faith, 1 Discipline. That's where Kurapira comes in. This is the Wither constellation that gives Wither buildup rate, which enables a bunch of constellations, and Nature's Reckoning, giving you back the explosions that you lost by not using Mark of a Vulture. Fill out the entire constellation, and then fill out all of Iroko. From here, you're actually going to reclaim some of these points. You don't really need the extra AoE, and you probably don't need either the extra wither duration or the extra plague damage. You can instead put these into other multipliers. That said, if you find that bosses aren't dying within your wither, respec into the wither duration, it is a very nice node. But instead, you're going to put everything into the projectile scaling right down this main path. So projectile damage, projectile damage, projectile damage, projectile damage. You don't need this node, and you don't need this node, though taking this one for some extra defenses is perfectly fine. And then for the very last points, you put them into Saint Hedwig for multiplicative summon damage, as remember, it is your summons which are using your skills. Now, as a couple of quick alternatives to some of these extra points, if you're struggling for cooldown, you can take the main cooldown constellation, but personally I didn't find it to be necessary. Similarly, if you're struggling defensively, you can take Our Lady of Mount Carmel. This will cause you to continually gain conviction as you get hit and lose agility orbs. Last but not least, if you're struggling for res, you could put 1 point temporarily into Fury and get access to Nana. This gives quite a bit of elemental resistance and maximum elemental resistance. Because these constellation steps are so intricate, and it requires so many steps, I recommend that you pay close attention to and potentially rewatch this section of a video as you progress through Abyss and Oblivion, because there are several points where you might have just enough to fill out a constellation, but you won't actually have enough points to both unlock it with the leapfrog technique and fill it out, so you'll have to come back later. In the meantime, just put those points into what is available for things like summon damage, or lightning damage, or elemental damage, or spell skill damage. So now I'm going to start a run to talk about the blessings in gameplay. Before I do, I want to point out one very important Shards of Fear though. Enemy wither resistance plus 100%. This build relies on withering enemies. Without that, a vast portion of your single target damage turns off. Do not ever select this modifier. If somehow all three of these offer you enemy wither resistance, redraw your options. It's well worth the soul stones as opposed to bricking your run. When it comes to blessings, you want to prioritize Phantom Marksman attack speed, Phantom Marksman damage, and Veil of Quills damage. This also means banishing some of the junk affixes, such as Veil of Quills quill velocity. Now, could reroll? I have 1,000 gold, or I could take the crit chance, as that's quite relevant. From here, I'm just going to start by casting out my Phantom Marksman, then running past enemies. And oh look, Veil of Quills damage or Phantom Marksman damage. In this case, I'm going to go Veil of Quills because it's the rarer affix that offers more benefits. And there we go, Phantom Marksman attack speed. I probably could have used a banish there. Remember how I said sometimes the belt of a cowboy is just going to proc out of nowhere? That was an example. But now that I have enough conviction, it shouldn't happen again for the rest of the run. Here, I'm going to banish the mana cost, does not really benefit the build, and continue to cast out a few Phantom Marksmen, then largely run past enemies. They'll die behind me, and unless they drop something interesting, it's not really worth going back for them. As you can see, once one enemy in a pack dies, the rest are going to die as well. The potential exception being enemies like this that dig underground. They tend to protect themselves from the marksman a little bit better than everything else. For Blessing of Foundation, I recommend starting with Blessing of Spirit. Progress it from mana to mana regen to minus skill mana cost to flat spell damage based on mana. After that, you can progress through crit chance, crit damage, projectile amount. Or alternatively, elemental damage, plague res shred. I found the latter two are more or less equal, so I take whichever one the game offers to me first. Now, if you are missing the explosion from Mark of a Vulture, it's a unique blessing. This does not take up any of your blessing spots, so it's absolutely worth using. If you're wondering, why don't we take Phantom Frenzy for skill speed on Mark of a Vulture? Remember, Phantom Marksman attacks with Repeater. Repeater hits spawn Veil of Quills. You are never casting Veil of Quills directly, you are instead casting Tupa's Wrath to buff the Phantom Marksman, therefore Veil of Quills skill speed has no effect on the build. One other thing to keep in mind, you are largely a support, so you cast out Phantom Marksman. If there's a tanky enemy, a rare boss, you'll use Prayer of Vengeance. Doesn't have a super short cooldown, but also doesn't need it. And beyond that, the only thing you're doing is casting Passage and then occasionally using Tupa's Wrath to buff your minions. As one last note on epic blessings, for Veil of Quills you want the damage blessing. Remember, lone quill means one projectile, so the projectile blessing, which is usually your best in slot, is not worth taking here. For Phantom Marksman, you can either go plus Phantom Marksman, this allows you to cast out more minions, it's a huge damage bump, or Phantom Marksman attack speed's surprisingly not bad, though not as good. So you should wait until later in the run to take that one, only after the +1 Marksman hasn't been offered to you. Now if you happen to be offered Garrison Supplies, a unique blessing for Prayer of Vengeance, this is well worth taking. Remember, plus 100% projectile amount for Marksman skills does scale the projectiles on your repeater, as that's a Marksman skill. Alright, here we go. Floor 21 boss, Nightmare tier 16. I'm going to run in, open with Phantom Marksman, of course, cast Tupa's Wrath to buff them, then use Prayer of Vengeance. At first, the boss won't seem to take that much damage. Once it's withered, it will just melt. There you go. Easy boss, double divine tool drop. And so there you have it. Minion Veil of Quills, a completely new build for patch 2.0. One thing to remember, you need the Journey of Nightmares enabled. So you have to start a new save file that's post 2.0 to play this build. You do not need the DLC. Without the DLC, you won't be able to use either Scorched Bones or Tupa's Wrath. Luckily, while these are quite a bit of damage and make it much easier to get to tier 16, they aren't strictly required. Now, as for the question that I'm sure someone's going to ask in the comments, is this better than the old version of a build? To be honest with you, I have no idea. I started to play the old self-cast Quills version, and I very quickly got bored because, like I said in the intro, I was simply playing the same thing over and over and over again. This is also why a lot of the builds that I'm playing this time around are different from things that I've played in the past. Will I go back and update all the old builds? Honestly, probably not, because I like playing different things and new stuff. That said, I'm sure some of them are still viable, so if you've been playing one of my old builds, you've fully updated it, I'd encourage you to make your own video and share it with the community. Oh, and don't forget to make a planner over on Maxroll. That said, if you're looking for more Hellclock content, maybe a build to get you started, I've got you covered. If you want to level, I recommend going with Tupa's Wrath. It's far smoother than Veil of Quills. Alternatively, you could level as Plague Split Shot, another really strong build, or Holy Fire / Fireball, though that one, along with Tupa's Wrath, do require the DLC. Links to those will be up in the card and down below. With that said, I've got a few more build ideas in the pipeline, including an update to Plague Repeater. That's going to be coming out soon, so get subscribed, and hey, you made it to the end of the video, you probably enjoyed it, so leave a like while you're down there. But for now, I'm going to get going, so thank you very much for watching to the end. I'm glad you've enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.